Offers nuclear developers something unprecedented. Everybody greenwashed into new initiatives. Fuel cycle staged out, private floor all clinical. Fast track startup, make the risk look trivial. Test floor, shield wall, all the boys try. So baptized, DOE nightlifes, everybody so dead-eyed. Pilot run, first of a kind, sell it for a limited time. Critical by July, what price Anderson act like? Direct access to national nuclear expertise. Everybody too calm, whole scene radioactive. Press shots, make the waste photogenic. Dress code, make disaster anthropogenic. Launchpad USA, wide-scale commercial deployment. Whole crew run D, say less. Stay sleep. Nuclear launchpad, dead concepts, investors restless. Fast track enrichment innovation. Mox, fuel in my car. Come on, baby, get strapped up. Out back, haul yard, operational, authorization chain, all optics intentional. Hot cell, seal bay, whole mood, look commercial. Bury what you can't solve, then rename it essential. Fuel bay, boys, paper suits, dead optics, close circuit monitor, whole process like narcotic. Launch that on my lips, make the rollout sound harmless. If the whole world peaks later, they don't even want to face it. Red lane, low tone, everybody too ready, talking like a half-life. Only hurts if you let a new core, old waste stream, but Britain stay heavy. If it all goes first critical, they'll just call it legendary. Launchpad USA, commercial deployment. Whole crew run D, say less. Stay sleep. Nuclear launchpad, dead concepts, investors restless. Fast track enrichment innovation. Nox, fuel in my car. Come on, baby, get strapped up. No one say waste stream, no one say routine, Vincent. And everybody says cool, clear is clean. Nobody wanna notice dry cat. No one say fallout, no one say we're not rockets. Everybody loves the rollout till the PR funds run. Nuclear launchpad, take concepts, investors restless. Oh, nuclear launchpad, world peace, none of them mentioned.
Hello everybody, welcome back. There's a link in the description if you're watching this after the show. It takes about 12 hours for the comments section from the live to show up. Oh, here we go. It's a happy anniversary, pinheads in the nuclear industry. Thanks for screwing up everything. Not. So we're going to get a crash course on Fukushima. We're 15 years down the road, and it's terrifying how many people know about it. So that's reactor 3 detonation. It's reactor 3 detonation. So ejected the reactor core and the fuel pool right out of the building. The plumes from all the different countries and all the shakers and movers and major institutions, the consensus is the planet was covered in 30 days. The unofficial consensus, which we can prove, is it was covered in 20 days. And that's not just the northern hemisphere, that's the southern hemisphere, it's the entire planet, the entire ecosystem. It traveled extremely, compared to the pollution indexes. So anthropogenic industry pollution will come over, rather, is well established, will come over and add to the pollution indexes in North America, particularly off California, for instance. It's a well-known corridor, the Trans-Pacific Corridor, for the pollution for big particulates, not microscopic particulates like we're talking about. These don't need jet streams, but they're up there anyways, right? So they're easy to rain out too. There's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. Where have all the insects gone? I done a video about that a couple of shows back. It's like 3 hours long. But to give you that whole insight, that's how long it takes, because there's a lot more to just insects disappearing. Why, and what's the mechanics behind it. So I lay out my case with the evidence. We've never been challenged in all these years with the documentation. We've never been challenged. That's pretty disappointing. The best time to learn is when you're challenged, right? You're forced to get things right. Well, the industry attack you so much, you are forced to get things right anyway, because anything, even a Freudian slip, the industry will chop it out and eventually string it together and put it out. It'll go viral on platforms. And everybody's like, he's an idiot. There's no context, though, and I'm not trying to convince the average person. Fukushima plume model shows 1 million atoms. So a becquerel is a pulse of energy. The energy pulses in every direction. This is an explosion. I call it a pulse of energy because it does it every second. And it might do it for 4 billion years, say. The industry might call it a decay because your brain goes, oh, it's decay. Well, I'm not worried about it because it decayed, Dana. Yeah, but it takes 4 billion years of pulsing energy every second, destroying chromosomes and cells and DNA before decays. So decay is not a very helpful word, and that's a word invented by the industry. This is not decays. These are expulsions of energy that will wreck chromosomes, cell, and DNA in every species in proximity. Say, so cesium-137, which you hear a lot. You don't hear about curium, which is the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods, which just needs lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium, which, if you get it, you get 3 tumors. So it's a very polite isotope. It's very heavy, though. Don't worry. It can only travel around the planet 100 times before it gets in somebody's body and stays there forever. Private email revealed the highest levels of the government worried about the health impacts. The hardest thing for me to do is not be sarcastic. It's so hard sometimes for me not to be sarcastic and hateful and arrogant towards the nuclear industry, because I've been at this for so long. So 1 million atoms per square meter on the West Coast, per square meter, that's they're talking about on the ground, physical on the ground. So we got at least that much. And it's, I can't remember exactly because there's so much of this, but I do believe they're talking about the xenon-133. It doesn't matter because there's so many. So then when you start seeing headlines like this, where have all the insects gone worldwide, you might take some of that into consideration. Think about how many insects does it take to raise 61 nests of fledglings over 20-something days, 21 days, 22 days. Give or take 12 hours before they can go out and get their own insects. Birds using 61 nests consumed 5 million insects in a 21-day period. So each fledgling was getting 700 insects a day. So you can see what a bird would disappear if the insects disappear, can't you? Worldwide decline in quantity and diversity of insects in the light of land use and climate. So immediately they're assigning a cause without evidence to support that assertion, right? Like, if you put in 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry, causes, and like, the way it works is that if you've got prime real estate and light, say, kills off the species that night, that real estate will fill in again the next day. That's the cycle of life. In the light of land use, well, you know, not all the land, not very much of the land is lit up. And then, so they put the word climate there, right? Just keep throwing big turds into the punch bowl until nobody wants to even look at the punch bowl, and then the nuclear industry wins. The United States hit with extremely large peaks. So it was a continuous plume covering the whole planet. But in that continuous plume covering, like, think of a snowstorm covering your whole planet before it's too late. That's how you should be, because that's what we're talking about, but you can't perceive it. You can't see it, or hear it, or feel it, or taste it. If you could, You wouldn't be going outdoors. You wouldn't be going indoors. You wouldn't be going outdoors. You'd be digging a hole looking for sanctuary. The United States was hit with extremely large peaks of Fukushima radioactive material. Large peaks. Now, there's uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium. The list is very, very, very long indeed. Significant amount of plutonium released for months. These are not equations that you want to have to figure out. Radioactivity from the plant was measured globally and blanketed, boots on the ground, the entire northern hemisphere. Well, we know now the consensus is it blanketed the entire planet. And so you got this elixir of gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas, pulsing energy, slamming into each other. And that creates what a Bromson was originally termed by German physicists as a Bromson-Lung effect. We call it an X-ray. And so the pulses of energy of gammas and alphas, neutrons, and betas are pulsing freely because you got cesium over here, betas over there, gammas over here, alphas over here. Cesium can pulse 600 feet, for instance. You can get where I'm coming from. But we're talking about blanketed. We're talking about millions per square meter, not one every 600 feet, which is still bad. Reprimand on that statement. Because your body doesn't have an autoimmune trigger, and neither does the species, have an autoimmune trigger that can defend against the effects. They can't repair the damage as quick as it's happening. It continues to happen. If it's in your bodies or the species body, their body will naturally treat it as a foreign object and try to build a sarcophagus around it. We call it a tumor. And by the time you discover that, you're way down the rabbit hole of misery. Your immune system's been compromised for a very long time in the species. So you're very vulnerable to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. Radioactivity from the plant measured globally and blanketed the entire northern hemisphere. What part about that statement is it people are refusing to appreciate? Large scale, because you better get that in your equation, into your lexicon. Large scale bee deaths spark fears over insects' health. The Royal Gazette, the Royal Idiots. Massive insect decline could have catastrophic environmental impacts. Well, that's the cycle of life, right? The insects and the biota and foliage and everything, it's all there on canopy floors, the meadows and everything. And then the biota, a million microscopic and small creatures, will just recycle that into nutrients, which turns into more beautiful butterflies, more beautiful insects, more beautiful trees and plants and flowers. And we are a soup of life. Well, we were. 80 years of nuclear industry put an end to that one pretty quick. And the effects of that plays out, but then the cascade starts happening. Because you got all these different facets, these minutiae of minutiae, the details of the details accumulating, and then it snowballs. The breaking of the food chain is very subtle at first. But after 15 years, when all the whales are emaciated, starved to death. And it took several years for these whales. Nobody was sure how long it would take pre-Fukushima for the whales. If you took their food source away, how long would it take them till they actually showed up starved to death? Now, all of these whales, because the only thing they got is skin and bones, they don't have fat and blubber anymore. If they die at sea, they'll sink because they have nothing to keep them buoyant, except for some gases naturally. But the system is depleted so significantly, right? The nutrients, nutrition values of the remains. So when you look at these species, think about all the bone structures. This is something like you can see the rib cage very defined up there. It's a different one over there, by the way. It's a different one here. There's no muscle mass, no blubber. There's not 12 inches of blubber anymore. Some of these whales are 60, 70, 80, 90 feet, of course, right? The blue whale, this should weigh absurd amount, like almost 400,000 pounds. You only have 25 to 30,000 pounds of just bones. And now I've dove under bones on like a number of occasions. In fact, I dove in front of the old whaling stations where there's 1,000 carcasses. And I dove on deep water dives on the blue whales, for instance. And the head is so big, it's hard to appreciate it. It looks a lot bigger underwater, obviously, but I was working. I spent many, many days working right alongside of or on whale carcasses, physically on some of the very old bone structures, right? It was amazing, bizarre. So the bronze whale up there maybe weighs 1,800 pounds, should weigh 88,000. That blue whale over there should weigh 200 tons, 400,000 pounds. It maybe weighs, that's almost 100 feet. It maybe weighs 30,000 pounds. These are just something we couldn't fathom pre-Fukushima, that the species could starve to death and survive to the point where they had no nutrition left in their body, so they ran themselves up on the beaches. Right? If these animals died at sea, they would have sank right away. So particularly that bronze whale up there, that is stunning. That was about 4 months ago. And it was hard for me to process it because the only picture we had was out of India. It was a very low quality. It was very difficult for me to comprehend. And of course, the Indian translation, when you translated the stories and everything, I scoured all their social medias looking for a picture. I sent them emails looking for any. I'm assuming when they come to North America, some of these pictures are being denigrated on purpose. It's a very powerful picture up there. But it really does, when you start looking at the context of these species, it's not just the insects, for instance. When you start looking at, and this was, that's another bronze whale over there. That was a month and a half, 2 months ago, for instance. All of these whales are in the last 12 months, except for one. But we've been covering it post-Fukushima pretty consistently. Now we're definitely, let's keep going with the show tonight because we got an important show. This is a very important show of documentation. Let's keep rolling. Massive, we're not even basically, we're just getting into it right away here. Xenon 133 in Washington, 450,000 times above detection levels. So these are significant and persisted for weeks. So the discontinuous plume, and we got some models coming up in a second. I'll just scoot ahead a couple of. So this is the Neptunium, the TEPCO Neptunium, but this is not based on the actual inventories. It's based on a fraction of the inventory of a single building. This is based on 20 days, and Neptunium-239 decays to Plutonium-239 every 2.5 days. There's 10 decays, so 25 days. So you got a 20-day model, so you might as well put them as a Plutonium-239 with a 24,000-year half-life. Data from Seattle survey may be withheld by the Feds for national security, while the United States has the most active reactors worldwide. And that would be the end of the nuclear industry immediately. And that's kind of one of the things we're talking about here. With the entire nuclear industry could not exist if people knew that the media and the universities faked reactor 4. I'm really glad to be here again, and I'm glad you're here tonight. Thank you so much for finding the courage and the fortitude and the time, the energy, and the effort. It's appreciated. It's a story everybody should be familiar with. So let's just go right to the madness of Reactor 4 for 1 second. So for this story to work, you got CNN, ABC Australia, Cecilia Vig, who's a prostitute at the White House currently. BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes, the BBC's Asian reporter, but he done the same thing for Reactor 3 where they're pretending on top of the building to your left. CBS Seth Dorn, it was the senator's son. This is just a fraction of the media's claiming they're on top of the building. Now, for that law to work, they had to be absolutely positive that all the universities weren't going to call him out, that all the other media is worldwide, large and small, was not going to call him out. They had to own that whole system of anything that's so-called main medias, right? They can't have any debate about that narrative right there. You just couldn't do it. And that'll hold true forever. They can't win the debates, see? So then the question is, why did they do that? Why did they pretend? And why was it so important to do it for reactor 4 is a question I still... Now, we know there was an enormous amount of plutonium in the 2 fuel pools at the top of the buildings. There was 30-plus years. It was one of the largest reactors in capacity. Inventories are stored at the top of the buildings. Massive decline in insects could lead to a catastrophic collapse of nature. All of this stuff is post-Fukushima stuff. This is just a single picture from 6 years, almost 6 years of research expeditions, 4 to 5 months or more, some years, on the ocean without coming home, doing field studies of 27,000 islands for 3 to 4 to 5 months at a time. And so you're looking for the species to the left. When we get there, they're all gone. The entire coast is stripped. And I was very familiar with all of those species personally. Right? I put up, long before Fukushima happened, I had put up a lot of beach lines, for instance, on these shorelines. So I used to struggle. Well, we typically wait till high tide if you could, so you can take the little Zodiac in, right? And I'd have to step, because when you're coming ashore low tide, you can't walk without hurting creatures. And so nobody wants to be doing that, right? And not only that, it's very dangerous. For the nut jobs that did try to get up through that, many of them took a pretty incredible beating and were too stupid to go back to their skiff and advanced up the beaches. And they're carrying these heavy ropes for beach lines to tie onto the back of your boat. So you have your anchor down, you put a beach line up onto the trees, because you know the wind is going to come from the mountains. So you go around these islands and hide. And then to keep your boat from swinging and drag, which causes you to drag anchor, because there's a huge tide exchange in 27,000 islands with all these fjords and inlets to suck in, for water to funnel through. Will pick up a lot of speed. There's a lot of oxygen in that water, and it's a tropical rainforest, so you're not getting ice in the winter times or snow, right? So the species are exposed twice a day all year long. They disappeared. Time to quit nuclear power altogether threatens the very existence of human civilization as we know it. That was 2011. I wonder if you had a chance to ask them about that again, what their reply would be, knowing what we know now, how right they were. Where have all the insects gone? The Neptunium and all the studies, and there's a lot of studies are on modeling, like this one is done on modeling. It's done on actual numbers that they know, but they refuse to include the numbers, say, of reactor 4, which was probably 9 reactor cores, or 10 or 11 or 12. Let's say 9. Former top International Atomic Energy Agency official, actually Fukushima is a catastrophe for every citizen of the world. Well, it's a catastrophe for every species, too, in that case, which clearly we already know is true, right? Rain with 20,000 particles of iodine-131 for every iodine, which is incredibly effective, ionizing radiating thyroid glands of every species in human. And it did. But the side effect also of this is not just, okay, it's contaminated. Most people, that's the end of their thought process, right? But their bodies are now producing radioactive hormones for the rest of their lives. And then and that's because of the gamma, iodine-131. So if that's happening, then the species have to be getting hounded and pounded with bone seekers like strontium and plutonium and curium, etc. Betas and neutrons, for instance. And so all the species after Fukushima were producing radioactive hormones and radioactive stem cells. Right, so just within a few generations, because a lot of species might breed multiple times in a summer, right? Spring, summer, and fall. Whereas humans are not able to reproduce that quick, right? And it's a long process, typically before the next one. And so the insects you would expect and the microscopic animals, not expected, but we know from history, that's where it's going to manifest. That's where you can quantify that there's significant impact. And so then you expect, now the reason I went back for 5 extra years was to see if the species to your left recovered. Because the ocean is a soup of life. So if a glass of water would have 1 billion creatures in it, 75 to 100 million of them are the phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain, which are the most important species for all those emaciated, starving whales I showed you. These are all the species of all whales are showing up worldwide emaciated at the same time. Well, how else? Like, if you went up to a biologist and told them that, and they would say, well, the food chain's broken. Right? You know what I mean? Because, the food chain is broken. And the consequences of that, we're not gonna duck and cover our way out of that one. Major U.S. paper, it's time to quit the nuclear power altogether. It threatens the very existence of human civilization as we know it. Yeah, well, we're going to, it's lots of famous quotes of when the bees are gone, we're gone 4 years later. Well, that 4 year later is in this decade. Where have all the insects gone? So this is Germany. A lot of these, I'm just showing you some of these. We're going to jump. There's some crazy stuff coming up right away. Got 2 more or 3 more of these. I wanted to include the whales because it's their birthday too. I want to include the insects because it's their birthday too tomorrow. Tomorrow's my anniversary. That was the day I got taken out of the diving industry with a decompression injury. That took a decade to learn to crawl my life back together. Thank goodness that happened to me, because otherwise I wouldn't be here today, right? Insect decimations upstages global warming. Insect decimation. Here we go. Massive decline in insects could lead to a catastrophic collapse of nature. A collapse of nature. So, 9 million species. And so, the force, a lot of people are looking for Bambi and whatever the case may be, right? The coastlines are pretty defined. They're very vulnerable because they're exposed to low tide twice a day. That's prime real estate. Pretty amazing looking, isn't it? You're never going to take that picture again. That's what it looked like in 2011. But you're never going to take that picture again. So for the coastlines to stay sterile like this is because the ocean is no longer a soup of life. The eggs are no longer available. So if the eggs are no longer available, we're looking at the last couple of generations of the species. The whales will be gone in less than 4 years, pretty well all of them by the looks of them. Whatever's left is going to be rough, folks. That's going to be rough. We're ready, I think, to jump to the next section. 3 more. 1 more. I just wanted to put some. As the public in every species worldwide sickens over time, the truth will come and leak out. Like every time I hear the word leak, I want to throw nuclear scientists into a fucking wood chipper, right? Oops! Did I just say that out loud? Was their fucking birthday too? Japan Times column is the public, possibly worldwide, sickens over time. The truth will leak out. Does that look like it's leaking out to you? And if you, because we've covered, every time I heard the word leak, I become unstable, let's put it that way. Like if I'm outdoors, somebody says the word leak to me, I'm liable to attack them. That's how much I hate that word. I'm just joking, folks. I can barely walk. I got an elephant foot, for goodness sakes. The swelling has gone down, in that gout. But still it's really difficult to walk. Now I can put a boot on it, if I can get the boot on without screaming. And I can get around for a while, but, there is a price to pay for that when you sit down later and take the boot off. Getting the boot off ain't going to be any fun. I'm in bad shape. At least I can sit here and do stuff like this for a while. Hopefully get another year out of it. 220 million atoms. So I showed you one with 20 million atoms of iodine-131 in Vancouver, British Columbia. Right? And you can't have 131 or 129 isotope without each and every one, without 220 million pulses of energy every second per liter. But you can't have that just only thing in, and so let me explain it this way. So the 131 was 20 million atoms per liter. Actual particles from the fuel. So I think this was much worse, and clearly because if you got 220 million atoms of iodine-129, this is not the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rods, folks. Curium isotopes are the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod, hence the name curium. You call a nuclear meltdown mess a curium, right? But just the fuel pools themselves, once you take it out of the reactor core, the biggest byproduct is curium isotopes. They're very, very powerful and long past the human experience, powerful. So long after this planet has zero life left on it, curiums and iodines will still be pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. It's the perfect extinction machine. 50 million year half-life. Okay, so the iodine-131, there's 10 times more 132 for every iodine-131. There's 10 times right here, look. So for every iodine-131, there's 10 times more 132, 30 times more 133, 31 times more iodine-129. The iodine-132, the iodine-133 are 9 times more effective. 9 times more effective than the incredibly effective iodine-131 at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands of every species. And the iodine-131 is just brilliant at it. It's super, super best at destroying the genetic makeup of every species, every human. It's the perfect way to denigrate in increments over time. And it's very subtle, right? So the industry is well aware of these adverse side effects. They're so aware of it. It's embarrassing how anybody in the nuclear industry can get to say very little is known about nuclear when it's the most studied element in human history. Like Fukushima, they've studied every facet of Fukushima in order to say it never hurt nothing. They studied everything in the ecosystem, every species, everything that makes up the ecosystem, they studied it so they can have a study to pull out of their arse for plausible deniability and to downplay, misrepresent, deceive, and bludgeon any opposition with. But it's not it's not a true, it's not a debate, right? They go, we got a study. We don't need a debate, we have studies. We have academics saying it, I worked it all out, and he said it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine. They've been doing it for 80 years, and that's all they say this stuff because that's all they're allowed to say. They got the job because they're willing to say it. It has, right, there's no way you can conflate, you can compare these together. They've studied every facet of nuclear. It's absurd how much they know about nuclear fallout. They studied everything in the ecosystem, every species, all 9 million species, way more than once each. So 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129. Think about that and how this is rain clouds coming from 10,000 miles of rain clouds coming off the ocean each day. And it comes in and hits your Cascades, your Rocky Mountains, and loses a huge percentage of your payloads before it goes over the mountain and deposits its radioactive fallout on the interior of your continent or countries. And then everything that's deposited on the seaside of your Rocky Ranges, your Cascades and everything, washes back, say, to the Pacific. Well, this is true for all oceans, unfortunately, now. It washes down to the coastline, so the coastlines get double brutalized. But here's the shittiest job you can get, right coming up here. That's the shittiest job right there. Does Buddy up there look like he's falling down or something? Like he got both of his hands out. Who walks like that? Who does stuff like that? Let me just see if I can zoom in on that. Shoot. Yeah, we got her. Because I do a lot of weird stuff on the side. So I think he might be with the hose. Hang on, we'll get a look at him now. Oh, he's got a hose in his hand, I think. He died. Well, I was looking at this picture and I was thinking to myself, the guy in the truck is probably saying on a loudspeaker, when the homeless guy with the hose falls down dead, the next guy run over and pick up the garden hose. This is a hose where they're spraying regions, so all of them would have died that day for sure. You can't go in with a Tyvek or paper suits. Well, if you see a paper suit, that's what they call a disposable, the human, and they'll reuse the paper suit. These are paper suits. So whoever got that job doesn't have a. I'm not laughing. I'm trying not to scream. Whoever got that job, listen, they died that day, for sure, or that night. I don't even know if they survived the next 20 minutes. You're stood up in regions and you're pointing. Well, what's the point of this again? In a nuclear wasteland? Like when you look at the reactors, let me bring up a picture of the reactors. It's like that person died that day. So think about the reason you're not seeing all kinds of flashy lights and equipment and everything else. Now you are seeing that fake pump truck, cement truck over in the corner over there. So you know this is, say, 2 weeks later at least. So then the question is, how come you're not seeing any major activity like you would expect? Oh, because it's the lethal doses. There's a good explosion coming up right here. So you got to realize you had 9 reactor cores from reactor 3, which is a plutonium mixed oxide fuel, which is absurd stuff. It's already gone through a chain reactions. Now it's going through a chain reaction again. This is literally stupid. The entire nuclear core, right? But it was the fuel pool, ejections of fuel parts. No, it was the fuel pool. A steam explosion. These are pressure explosions. So the reactor needs 4,500 tons a minute. Needs 1 million gallons each minute. That works out to 6,450,000 one-ton pickup trucks of water every 24 hours. Or think about in 1 minute. That's 4,500 tons. So imagine 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks with 1,000 liters in the back of it, 2,200 pounds, going past your front door every minute. 4,000, so that's 70 a second or something, right? So 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks blast past your door every minute to dump water into a normal reactor. And along come, and then you build that reactor on the tectonic plates. We're 70 kilometers away from the tectonic plates, with 3,000-year legacy of massive tectonic movement and tsunamis. And keep your fingers crossed and hope nothing goes wrong. That's what they done. So anybody that's out there is out in this area, that's where they're to, they're in a nuclear wasteland. That's 9 reactor cores spread all over this area. So anybody who took that job, like squatting down, the green you're seeing, is a region that's sprayed to bind because there's such a high level of emissions there. And it doesn't even make any sense what I'm looking at. Like this will never be replicated, hopefully. This before Fukushima happened, you would never see a picture like this. Let's put it that way. Oh my goodness. We don't know who it is, unfortunately, because they were most likely incinerated, and they were one of the 800 urns that was given to a monastery that first year. These were the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society, including the immigrants who don't even speak the language, were tricked and deceived and manipulated and coerced with huge incentives. Like you can make $10,000 a day. Well, at least the boss will, off each person, because they're not going to get their paycheck because they won't be alive at the end of the day. So if you're wearing tungsten vest at a nuclear meltdown site, you're considered dead meat. Workers are wearing heavy tungsten vests take turns to go up on the platform and communicate with the remote-controlled operators. Remote control. So the operators who are using the crane is so radioactive that they're separated from that crane by like 1,000 feet cords, and they have this environment-contained system where they sit at desks and they control the crane. So, but they have the homeless will get up on top of the nuclear meltdown with tungsten vest on, at number 3 at the Medusa, and say, a little higher, Georgie. I'm getting kind of warm up here. They don't collect their checks at the end of the day. Whoever got that job is not collecting their check at the end of the day. They're showing $5,000 and say, look, you go up there when you come back, we're going to give you $5,000 and send you on your way. And well, why are you going to give me that much money? Well, because nobody will do the job. It's a little bit dangerous. If you fall, you don't get to collect your money because we can't come and get you. So, well, I won't fall. I'll be okay. I'll do it. Give me another beer, Georgie, or give me a drink of sake. So workers wearing heavy, these are not workers, these are the homeless and the destitute. We've never heard from any of these so-called workers. Dead worker tells no tales. I mean, they're doing this at all nuclear dumps, too. They're getting the immigrants, the destitute. Workers who go up on the platform, and the nuclear industry is very careful of who they hire. Right? All you need is somebody who's really greedy and don't like people. If you got that attribute, you got a job. And if you're really good at that attribute, you'll get promoted. Workers who go up on the platform are exposed to significant amount of gamma shines, neutron bombardment, alpha shine, beta rays. You're talking about on top of multiple nuclear meltdowns where your organs are going to melt in about 20 minutes. So you have 20 minutes to get up there on Medusa. Like whoever died here, whoever this person is, they died. The Yachi worker dies have been preparing a cover for unit number 3. But all the media was up on top of it getting the fuel out of it. Remember Rupert Winfield Hayes? Workers are fired once they have heat stroke. Why would you fire someone when they get heat stroke? It's not heat stroke, it's radiation sickness, right? There's so many studies to downplay Fukushima. Shortage of nuclear workers. More and more companies too close as personal dose limits are exceeded. So actual nuclear workers are not going anywhere. They're getting into a nuclear meltdown. You can't pay them enough money. The only person getting these jobs are people who have absolutely no education. Tokyo Vice Governor suggested a Fukushima draft. All of Japan must face it. This is what they mean by that, by the way. They go over and stand over there, and there's some guy on a microphone with a speaker, and there's somebody else talking in his ear from a mile away. Tell that guy there with the paper suit on to go over and point his finger and get a close-up picture of it. I'm not going to give you his share of the money when he dies this afternoon. The mentally disabled are working at Fukushima. Men are forced to go to the plant. Homeless are treated like disposable people. Yeah, that's disposable right there. Whoever got that job, whoever that person is, they're considered disposable. Well, they're guaranteed disposable. Why would you put another human in that environment? I mean, send us people who don't mind dying. Unless anybody who wears that paper suit and stands in an area covered in regions at a nuclear meltdown site are the most desperate people on the planet to make. Now, like, they're supposed to get $1,100 US a day, the employees. These people were making $11 a day. And because their food and their boarding in the nuclear wasteland was taken out of their check, they usually walk away with, in the hole, or 10 or 20 bucks left in their pocket. Nuclear slaves at Fukushima. Workers have debts paid off, forced to stay as indentured servants. Foreign workers may soon be needed at the plant. Foreign workers. Like, they tried to, in 2015, this was 2013. In 2015, they actually going to change the Constitution to declare blue-collar workers residents. Can get, not full residents rather, but can get their residency right away because they needed more people at Fukushima. We came out and harassed them for 6 days straight because the media came out with a lot of stories to promote it. The university said, yeah, they'll be just fine. Well, why don't you take your students and go on down there, bucko? This person died that day. Oh, my goodness. Here we go. Let's keep it rolling here. So what are we? We're only at day 3 yet, are we? It's a start. It's a start. Tomorrow's the anniversary, and the big day tomorrow, big shot day tomorrow. So what's going to happen in Iran and Israel tomorrow? America just pulled out, according to Trump, the U.S. government. Iran said, not so quick. We're not finished fighting. There's around 4,000 ships outside the Strait of Hormuz. Container ships that can't get through. A couple tried. Looks like they suffered, paid for it. Give it another couple of days. There's a whole lot of countries are not going to be able to wipe their earth because the toilet paper didn't show up. Let's put it that way. And I'm talking literally and figuratively too, by the way. It's outrageous. Homeless people are being sold to companies. That's what you're looking at right there. Anybody who got that job there is homeless. It's okay, though. They'll reuse the suit, the $10 suit. They'll put the homeless guy in a urine and give him to a monastery. This is outrageous. Homeless people are being sold. If this is Forbes, of all people, if Forbes is calling something in the nuclear industry outrageous, it must be pretty bad. It's got to be pretty wicked. Forbes is as pro-nuclear as you'll ever get out there, is what I mean by that. Even Forbes, well, you know, there's a sour side to the story, I guess, is that it reflects bad back on the nuclear stock market. Starts to make people a bit skittish. Especially when you try the word gangster. So the people are not only sent into to die, they're treated cruelly the whole time. And it sounds about right for Japan. If the truth was admitted about Fukushima, it would have broken the backbone of the economy. So what? It's better that 30 million Japanese died than all the species on the planet. I gotta take one for the team there, scumbag. This was Jasco and another creepy, I'm not going to say the word today. I've used it many times in the past. Gotta check the volume. I'm probably going to screw that up. I think that's the same one.
Would it be accurate to say that no one has died as a result of exposure to radiation in Fukushima? So, and secondly, can you assure that no one will die as a result of exposure to radiation in the future?
Now look at a bizarre face. I'm going to zoom in on these two degenerates. But it's really interesting how he came along. He's laughing. Jasko's like, man, I gotta get this guy off the reporter's Roscoe. Let me just go back a little bit.
In Fukushima. So, and secondly, can you assure that no one will die as a result of exposure to radiation in the future?
You're laughing.
You want to take that one? Yours.
And I'll get it. Not bad. I'm close. Let's watch it a few more times.
You want to take that one? Yours. Well, what we know right now...
Now, that was a sinister laugh, wasn't it? Look at Jasko with his fingers spread out. He's got his fingers all spread out. Big stupid smile on his face. His ass should be dragged into court for what he did.
There have been no fatalities that we're aware of that are directly related to radiation exposure. I believe there were a few workers who were killed at the plant because they were performing work, and when the tsunami hit, they lost their life.
I mean, wow. Now, to be fair, that was 15th or 16th or something. Crazy, man. Like, when you look at this, this, that, when you're looking at that, D-A-T, that, when you're looking at that, the entire nuclear industry could not exist if people knew the media and the universities faked reactor for fuel pool. So normally I'd put a question there. Tonight I didn't. Don't ask me why. Yep. Worst case scenario map showed Japan cut in half by forced evacuation, cut in half. This wasn't worst case scenario. The whole country evacuated. Would have been the worst case scenario. That's what they should have done, unfortunately, and doing that same thing for the west coast of North America. Even in the future, should be evacuated. Right, the whole western seaboard. Mexico all the way Alaska. So the radius, 250 kilometers, this is a voluntary evacuation zone. Well, like I'll show you numbers of Tokyo coming up, and if you're honest, and the only, if you're there in that 250 kilometer circumference, well, the worst case scenario did happen. The worst case scenario did reactor 4 go. That was their word. Even though reactor 3 went, that wasn't the worst case scenario, even though that was worse than reactor 4 because reactor 3 was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. Fukushima worst case beyond 250 kilometers could be evacuation zone if the fuel in the spent fuel pool number 4 melts. So if that happens, the fuel in the pool melts. Of course, the media said it did, and they claim they're on top of it. So, of course, they're both official pictures. I don't know which one to pick. They're both official pictures. Apparently, there's people out there that says that. I don't know which one to believe, Dana. The question is, 150 feet above that stump, does it look like this? If you think the answer is no, and it took you more than a second to think about that answer, then get your finger out of your eye because you're going to go blind. You don't need to be an architect or an engineer, or even built a fence or killed a fly on the wall. You don't need to be a scholar or a genius to know that the building to your left, there's nothing above it. They can't be 150 feet above the stump. And that's all I got to say about that. Not really. So if reactor 4, let's play, I'm not going to tell you because I want to be a surprise. Don't you like surprises? See if I can get it before anybody in the comment nails it on me. I'll give you a little hint. 4. Oh, might as well get the other title, Taylor. Make a party of it. We got Ernie in there, and we get the crazy lady, Helen Caldicott. Helen Caldicott has wrote over 14 anti-nuclear books. She's famous. She started up a whole bunch of organizations. She's the go-to for millions of people.
Building 4 is also...
I'm sorry. I was trying to check the volume, but sometimes when I'm importing important videos, the audio is not accessible unless I move it a couple of panes. You'll figure it out in a minute. Okay, so she's doing an interview with Talking Stick TV with Mike over there. And she's going to say number 4, they got all the fuel out of the fuel pool. Right, the fuel pools are at the very top of the building. That's the reactor over to your left. I put some pictures to your left.
Building 4 is also similarly fragile, and it's got a huge cooling pool on top with all its fuel rods.
Now look at the picture at this point. There's nothing left there. The building is completely gone. Now, when she was doing the interview, that was the stage they were at. This was early 2013, I believe.
But they have been removing them.
She's scratching her head. So the fuel pools are the red depictions in that. And the reactor cores are at the top. These are 190-foot, 65-meter, 19-story buildings. She's supposed to be the expert. She's done this hundreds of times, where she said they got all the pool out of it, all the fuel out of the pool. But you're talking about 9 reactor cores because it was doing maintenance, so...
Cooling pool on top with all its fuel rods, but they have been removing them. And it's been a very delicate procedure, and they've removed almost all. So if that collapsed now, I think it would probably be okay.
But anyway, there was one... I think it was a surge report. Yeah, it was the surge report. Bless his heart, boy. He's one of the few people that got her on for an interview and asked her. Everything was going good for like a half an hour, and then he was like, "Have you ever seen those videos?" I'll let...
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4...
Now, I put the pictures on both sides. The little square in the center is the video. So these pictures on the side, I can't remember. They might change, might not. So this is what's left of the building, but 150 feet above it, she says it looks like that. And she's done it hundreds of times. I'll shut up.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in, saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
I don't know, Helen. How can you repair the top when it don't exist? Let's ask Arnie Gunnarsson. He's an expert. He's an expert lawyer, too, by the way. Fairwinds. Everybody likes to run to those two. Arnie won't lie to us.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel.
I decided to spice it up a little bit with Arnie's video. With Helen's, I put it at the top center. With Arnie's, I put his little box down there. So the pictures behind it are my pictures. Arnie's going to tell you it looks like that one to the left, not like this one. They're the experts. You got a nice suit, nice tie, you got a beautiful office, got a big building, got a big budget, he's got all kinds of people working for him. So I must be wrong then, therefore, right? That's the way it works.
Now, the division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima. And Unit 4 has always been my biggest concern. If you watched our website, on the very first week of the accident, I was saying that if Unit 4 were to catch fire, you'd have to evacuate Tokyo.
Oh, evacuate Tokyo. So if that happens, they should evacuate Tokyo, you say. But it didn't happen, right, you lizard? For a worst case, beyond 250 kilometers could be evacuated if the number 4 melts. Let's look at it. No, it looks good. I know it looks pretty rough, right? But at the top of it, 150 feet above it, nuclear industry, I guess they got invisible beams now, right? So terrorists don't get you. Once was a terrorist, boom, boom, boom. New Scientists, I don't like these people at all, eh? The most dishonest creatures, besides Arnie Gunnarsson, Helen Calicut, Christopher Busby. Snakes in the grass, right? That's what those people are. Right? Venomous snakes in the grass that will bite you if you go in the grass. / talking about nuclear. Fukushima leaks will keep fisheries closed. Leaks. Let's have a look at one of those dear little old things they call a leak. That look like a leak to you? Yeah, every time I hear the word leak, I'm not very pleasant to be around. How about that leak right there? That's a pretty big leak. So no matter how bad it is, if you lose the entire inventory, well, it's leaking out a little bit. I'm not going to make it offside or nothing, but it's leaking out. And that's what I'm talking about there. What's his name from 3 Mile Island? Arnie's partner in crime at the time. Oh, wow, that's cool. I can't remember his name. That's a good thing. That's a good day. Every time I hear his name, I kind of a little bit upset. Curium and plutonium outside the Fukushima plant indicate nuclear explosion at reactor number 3. The explosions were because, we started that earlier, but I digressed. The explosions were caused because you need 1 million gallons a minute to keep it cool. That's pretty cool, right? 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks every minute to keep it cool. If you don't have it, what happens? Yeah. It heats up, right? Then what happens? It goes bang eventually, right? So if you keep putting tire into your car, what happens? Putting tire into your car. Putting air into the tire in your car. Gotta watch out, the industrial chop that one up. I gotta go back and try to erase that after the show. And industrial chop that and say, see, Dana's an idiot. Broken spent nuclear fuel rods may have been scattered. Well, let's have a little look at that, the explosions. Do we want the videos? Yeah, why not, eh? And strange routines on a Tuesday. It's hard to say with me because it's a bit of a hit and miss sometimes. I got so much. I was saying today, I got so much information. Where the hell did it all come from? How the hell did I ever get... So this is reactor 1 exploding. I'll get my big old noggin out of the way because that's a distraction. Let me do that again. I apologize. 1 and 2. This is reactor. See that pulse event? That was a pressure explosion. So they're already at 1,000 pounds per square inch. So when they're not getting 6,450,000 one-ton pickup trucks of water in 24 hours, the heat's going to build up to that kind of shit. Now that plume replicates itself every second. That replicates and gets bigger because it's fuel particulates. That process never stops. That's why you end with plumes covering your entire planet. So it's like something out of a cartoon or a Hollywood movie. And this is the same thing. This is reactor Medusa, reactor 3 rather. The big shot, number 3. That's the fuel pool reactor core is heading back down. Let's go get some homeless. We're going to need a lot of homeless for this one, guys. So that was, let me play that one more time. That's reactor 3 explosion. Do you see, there was a flame, right? So, there's hydrogen buildup, right, obviously. But it's not hydrogen that caused the explosion, or you would see a bigger explosion. As the fuel pool reactor cores, it's a slower motion, so they're drifting back down to Earth, back down to the site, the surrounding areas. So just reactor 1 you're talking about 9 reactor cores in each explosion being released. It's really hard to appreciate because you turn this into particulates, and the particulates are each splitting atoms every second for millions of years. And this is fuel particulates we're talking about, folks. So they're producing gammas and neutrons and betas and alphas and proxies or X-rays. And that's distributed all over the ecosystem. That covered all the tsunami debris. So as the tsunami got washed all over the oceans and sank or washed up on coastlines, we distributed fuel particulates everywhere. It's just another way that it was done, right? But these fuel particulates are so small they can make it, and it did, across the ocean. And then they were given like xenon, right, with a short half-life. Iodine-131 with a half-life, short half-life. 132 iodine with short half-lives. They ignore, right, the fact that the majority of the product is going to be curium isotopes. And the amount of plutonium was absurd. You only need a couple of kilograms distributed worldwide to eventually destroy all the species. So having maybe 50 tons of it distributed from 36 reactor cores. I mean, there wasn't a nuclear scientist on the planet that looked at this and didn't know the reactor fuel pools, reactor cores were gone, but none of them ever come out and said it's gone for sure. None of them. Not even the students in the nuclear industry worldwide in any country, on any continent. Explosion at Fukushima Unit 3 drove nuclear fuel out of the storage pool, scattered it up to 2 miles away. And they're talking about that one right here, right? The entire nuclear core injected into the environment. So there was originally some descending voices because we've never seen this before. It's been covered up successfully now. In 2023, August the 24th, that's when they changed the equation. They said, well, there was no meltdowns. Yeah, there was a meltdown, but nothing got out. Everything's in the tanks, and it's only tritium. Because we got us the ELP system, right? There was multiple systems. It wasn't ELP. It didn't matter which system you had. The filtration can't work because you're talking about we have so much. So you're talking about within a 24-hour period, the filters are going to be 1,000 sieverts. You're going to have a chain reaction in the filtration system, so you can't even attempt it. And remember, this stuff doesn't need oxygen to go and do its dirty deed to humanity and the 8 million species. It can do it on the bottom of the ocean. It can do it deep inside the earth. It doesn't need oxygen to burn at enormous temperatures. And when it's burning at these enormous temperatures, it's cannibalizing and ionizing and radiating and atomizing and aerosoling all the steel and rebar and cement and rocks and gravel and water and everything else. And that becomes a weapon. That's released and that's contributing right to the radioactive fallout worldwide. Like, it's hard to comprehend that if you took a rock, say this big, and you threw it on a molten nuclear meltdown core, it would atomize an aerosol at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And all of those atoms are going to be antipagetic, isotope, ionizing, radiating, gammas, alpha, neutrons, betas. And it'll be dangerous to everything replicating cells for millions of years. But the numbers we're talking about in just a gram is an enormous amount of numbers, and that's distributed worldwide. There's no immune system that has a trigger for defense, so it attacks it. And that's permanent for all the species. And the industries knew all this. They're unbelievably aware of everything, I'm telling you. Explosion at Fukushima Unit 3 drove the nuclear fuel out of the storage pool. There you go. Not very often you hear it, is it? Unburned MOX fuel containing plutonium was in a mushroom-like cloud of black smoke when number 3 exploded, which is right here, which is right there, to your left, which is right here. But when you watch the video, which is right here, ejecting the reactor core right out of the building, you're atomizing and aerosoling 9 reactor cores in this motion you're looking at. Once it's exposed to air, it catches fire for, and now it's going to liberate all of it eventually. So that plume is a result of the fuel burning in the air, because it's not supposed to be in air, right? This plume, though, is going to double in size every second almost, because it's splitting atoms. The whole plume now is 8 or 9 reactor cores, and it looks like dust to you. It looks like a normal explosion. But this dust is, every particle is splitting atoms for millions of years, reproducing itself. And lots of these are able to get up into the jet streams. Now, the industry done a couple of other stupid stuff. They kind of excelled at that stuff. I just got to put... So they sprayed salt water on these reactors for about 40 days straight. And the idea of it was it was meant to make everybody complacent. It had no real redeeming qualities to it. And so therefore, they done more damage because they done it with bad intentions. And that has left us now in a terrible state. Because, the hoses they're using are spraying 300 tons a day. That water is atomized and aerosol, ionized and radiated. And there was this phenomenon that they were aware of in the 50s and 60s. I'll just bear with me 1 second, I'll give you some documentation to help you, hopefully. Sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. So it tends to concentrate in the testicles 360 atoms of radioactive sulfur on top of everything I already showed you, which is absurd. Per day may have been inhaled, sequestered, by Californians after Fukushima, and it tends to concentrate in the testicles of the male species. That's an interesting thing to say, right? So the females, if it goes into the ovaries, it destroys their eggs, and they're born with all their eggs where we reproduce them. The males reproduce, the females have them all. So it's easy to wipe out a species using radioactive fallout because of that particular attribute. And the industry is unbelievably aware of these particular attributes. They were aware of it originally because they had baked in to their charters for their facilities that nothing would get off site. And so this is sterilizing all the species too. Now the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyball effect is a freak of nature effect. It synergistically enhances the elements, so it can think of, so the sulfur is liberated from the salt water. The sulfur is in a spherical ball shape, kind of like a geometrics of just let me see if I can find. Oh, I put it over here so I could find it, and then I forgot. So shaped like this kind of configuration, there's a few configurations. And then that's able to ingest the uranium, plutonium, americium, neptuniums, the strontiums, the endless herd of isotopes. What's described as an unprecedented phenomenon, forming new uranium compounds. So it's not your typical, not just uranium, by the way, and they are able to travel long distances like carbon buckyballs. And so this is the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs, because the sulfur, let me see if I can explain that. I can do some things sometimes. The sulfur peroxide neutrons, because they were spraying sulfur. Let me one more try. They were ordered to stop it eventually. Here we go. They were ordered the peroxide enhanced nuclear fuel corrosion in seawater. Peroxide, urinal peroxide. So sulfur. You see buckyballs. Sulfur peroxide. Sulfur buckyballs, sulfur peroxide, hydrogen buckyballs. I got more evidence. Ultimately, that's the best way to describe it. And you notice from the ocean testing of nuclear weapons, tomorrow is the anniversary. Now, I'm wondering, do they have a big surprise going on and they're going to do it in Iran and Israel on the anniversary? There was it announced that the COVID was March the 11th, 2020, right? So there's more to it now. They do have a history of doing stuff on that anniversary. As a complete distraction. Like the Libyan war, Gaddafi. They were hoping that was going to move Fukushima out of the news cycle. It basically did. Well, if they hoped, then they know what's going to happen, right? Let's keep it rolling here. A multi-scale data integration approach for mapping air dose rates around the Fukushima Daiichi plant This picture to your left over here, well, right there is reactor 4 and reactor 3. You can see they're pixelated out. Across the street from it was the common spent fuel pool. Why is that pixelated out? The roofs is grayed out, and then north of the plant, of the north side of the common spent fuel pool is where they're taking reactor cores from all reactors, the oldest reactor cores. Remember, this plant is 30 to 40 years old, right? So the inventories were basically double stacked in all the fuel pools at the top of each of the buildings. So these pictures, I got a few more coming up in a moment. These pictures were released in January 2020, and I found them on a Chinese site that I had translated about Fukushima, and it was links to TEPCO's site. And so I went over and I started downloading all of these pictures. So I think it was 736. I've done a video on it a couple times. Most recent one was 736 mystery pictures. And when you zoomed in on it, you seen all this stuff was pixelated out. And so it was from a high-quality drone. There was no real explanation of why it was released and why they waited 10 years to do that. And I'm the only person I know on the entire planet that has ever come out and certainly showed the pictures, and I went through them. And I put links below that video so you can do it yourself. So then the only reason you would cover up the common spent fuel pool, which the tsunami ran right through, it's the same street, it's at the same levels, it's down lower than the reactors. It has windows on that side that would allow the infiltration of the tsunami. Not that that would have mattered. The tsunami, as we know from the other reactors, went right through the buildings anyway, right? So it done the same thing. And behind the building, what you see that those containers back there are transport truck containers stacked up where the tsunami washed up around the back of it. Nuclear expert, powerful explosion number 3 may have been from the prompt criticality. Well, it was running. Right, there's the best way, as far as I'm concerned, to look at it is it didn't get 6,450,000 one-ton pickup trucks of water every 24 hours. So on the 14th, it had pressurized so much, it was like a pressure cooker where you welded the top on it, eventually it's going to blow up, right? Because the fuel is still splitting atoms for millions of years. So if you turn the reactor off, you don't have the water, and it needs an absurd amount of water every minute. Because it was running, it didn't have time to get into a cold shutdown mode. That takes several days, enormous amount of water. I wouldn't want the electricity bill for a nuclear power plant for one day, let alone every month. It's enormous, I'm sure. Nuclear fuel cycle back in after Fukushima. The nuclear industry had produced all these studies in order to just make people sick of arguing, right? They couldn't win an argument because they had a fake study for every facet of the ecosystem. Excuse me. Rapid meltdown happened at reactor number 2 and 3, indicated by black smoke at number 3. You've seen the video. I played the video. Let's play it one more time for you before we get too far down the list here. Here's number 3 exploding. So the black smoke was the fuel particulating. It was it was atomizing and aerosoling. You can't see the flames per se because this is from 30 kilometers away or something, right? It was a security camera that was blowing up, but the fuel has to be underwater or it degrades and then catches fire. It's a zirconium cladding, and zirconium was what they used to use in the old, you remember the 1930s, I think it was, the big flashes, and there was a hammer would come up and break the glass. And then the zirconium dust was exposed to oxygen. And now it would just light up a big flash. And that's how the old big cameras, you ever see the big, that was when everybody was, It was a big time in human history back then. You know, TVs and everything were starting to they were little, mind, but that ability to record videos in high quality and play it back for, you know, people were still going to theaters all the time, but there were still TVs now were out there. But anyway, the big flash was zirconium. And that's why I would never buy antiques, because these cameras were used in all kinds of historical moments too, right? So huge contamination, all parties, these same cameras and flashes were used. So a lot of antiques were completely contaminated. And at the same time, just before that, they were using radium polish, radium wax, radium soap, radium makeup, radium lipstick, radium eyeshadow, radium toothpaste, radium suppositories. I mean, they were doing everything they could to murder everybody permanently, right? This stuff was nasty and hideous. But they were using radium polishes, radium for steel, for chrome, for tables, for carpet, for disinfected, sprayed for disinfected, sprayed on everything to shine it up, sprayed on your vehicles. So, I mean, I wouldn't buy an antique without a specific type of Geiger counter. And I would look at everything. Because when you got a really nice looking car and you got your polish, you know, back then was a lot of leather seats and that, so everything was polished up with radioactive slime that doesn't go away for 5,000 plus years, right, for the first decay. Sadistic industry that knew better. It understood exactly what it was doing. It stayed doing it. It fought to the end. It called people lawyers. It had teams of lawyers fighting to keep the product on the market to poison people. Their best solution they came up with was surround every nuclear power plant with farms, as far as you can see, because the fuel cycle never stops. You're always splitting atoms. A multi-scale data integration approach for mapping air dose rates around the Fukushima Daiichi plant. So they were flying over with high-quality drones originally. They didn't release any of the pictures. They were all high-quality pictures, per se, for that day, certainly, for that date. And when you zoomed in on it, you were seeing, like, the common spent fuel pool was completely pixelated out, and the other reactors. A rapid meltdown happened at reactor 2 and number 2 reactor, folks. A rapid meltdown. And number 3. Let's look at number 2 for a few seconds. The fuel rods at Fukushima number 2 reactor were fully exposed. So because the fuel is zirconium cladded, the fuel rods themselves are made out of zirconium. And once you put it through a chain reaction, it has to be underwater or it's going to catch fire. Once it's activated with the chain reaction, with the neutron bombardments, the alphas, the beta rays, the gamma shines, because of the process they're using, right? They're able to get away with it. But once it goes through a chain reaction, it loses that ability, right, to be neutral. Fuel rods of Fukushima number 2 reactor were fully exposed, which meant they caught fire. Now, reactor 2, that reactor core and the fuel pools went down into the earth. They split the earth open in at least 6 places where they had permanent Geiger counters that were calibrated for 10 sieverts. And they were all maxed out all the time. Because the steam coming out of the ground, they had to abandon the site over and over and over. And so typically when you see anything, if you look up this... the pictures of the site, you'll notice that the whole site, the ground is covered in big steel sheets stacked and welded. Like, these are big sheets, 8 feet by 16 or bigger, and they're laid there by cranes with the magnets. And they build a system so the homeless don't drop dead because the other ones will run away. At one point, there were 16,000 workers quit. Homeless people, right? Reactor 2 core melted through the containment vessel. September 27, 2011. So just because that building happened, remember, on one side of it was reactor 3, and the other side here, behind me, was reactor 1. It exploded. Reactor 1 right here exploded. Reactor 3 over there exploded. I showed you explosions of 2 of them just now. Japan confirms a full meltdown at all 3 reactors, June the 6th, 2011. Thank you very much. You can have another. First off, the fire department is the very last people that should be going in there, because this is not a job for firefighters. This is the job for the cowardly nuclear scientists and academics. And if you give them a latte, they might do it. So they're on the ocean side of the turbine buildings. So they're down, like in front of them is the turbine buildings. On the other side of that is the road, and on the other side of that is one of the reactors, for instance, in the context of where the two are right there. And so they're spraying water, and the amount of water that actually makes it across to the other side of the street is just, say it's 1/100 of the water they're spraying there, which is not a huge volume. It's 300 tons a day or something. And then, because the reactor is so much, you got to worry about wind and everything else. You already lost the inventory, so now you're just washing everything all over the place. But they don't know what they're doing, right? These people have no idea what they're doing. They know that if you go around the corner on the other side of the building, they'll drop dead, their organs will melt. So this is a terrifying view, I'm assuming, from the administration's office, which was up on a hill. That looks about the right angle for it. So whoever got these 3 people, they would have died that day. They're spraying a reagent that's going to bind with fuel particulates because the levels in the air are so high. And because nobody in their right mind would actually go in that environment. Like, there's no nobody who knows anything about nuclear. If you showed them a picture and say, why don't you go down and give them guys a break, they would say, yeah, sure. They get up, and when they turn around, get behind you, and they probably claw your eyes out, screaming, because they know that's the death sentence. That's the death sentence to go right there. Those people unequivocally died that day, within a few hours or less of doing that. It's a suicide. They done that to get pictures, right? Because they might use it to say, see, it's not so bad. These were sacrificial lambs. So this is another picture from the drone. Why is the common spent fuel pull up in the corner? Hit away. So that's reactor 4 on the bottom. This is the pump house. You can kind of see the fire truck red down there. That's when it was spraying. They brought them in much later. There was nothing you can do. The reactors were all... When one reactor detonated, you could never get near it to accomplish anything. Everything was a sacrifice for pictures to lull people worldwide into complacency. We didn't fall for it. And right here is reactor 3. So why was... And this was reactor 2. Why was all of this pixelated out? Why was the common spent fuel pool with decades of reactor cores pixelated out? This was the dry cache storage. The tsunami ran right through it. You can see the explosion, through stuff everywhere. We don't know. We have pictures of inside of it. There are casts missing. There are casts there. These casts are around 50,000 pounds. The tsunami, you can see a car there, so it'll give you context of how big this facility actually is. Well, just on up a little bit north further is reactor 5 and reactor 6. And the gray buildings here are what they call the turbine buildings. And then so the turbine building, the first one is reactor 5 and reactor 5 turbine building. The furthest one is reactor 6 and its turbine building are completely pixelated out. They're completely pixelated out. So why would you pixelate? Even the roofs of each of them they're quite a long ways away from reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. So why were these pictures released in the 10th year with no explanation from a drone. Unless you zoom in, you'll never notice that. If you don't zoom in, if you're just, you got these pictures from a drone flying over the site, and then the way the pictures that were released, there wasn't a lot of them, 736 mystery pictures. You'll find my video for all of them. They draw you a line. So this picture will take you all the way down to reactor 6. Now they do that also for west and south and east. And they draw a line to other places that are pixelated out. Far away, right up by the entrance in the southwest corner, for instance. And we don't know what it was. We have detailed type maps of it, but everything has been removed and changed out, and all kinds of structures have been built up in those other areas. So currently it's very difficult to say which is which. I'm lucky enough that I have enough documentation we were able to trace it down. And so that might be in the 736 mystery picture video. Well, that's exactly where it would be, actually. Those other couple of spots. A lot of these big 300,000 gallon tanks were torn off their foundation. And then the ones that weren't, the atmospheric pressure of the water, which is 14.6 pounds per square inch, was enough to concave those tanks. You can't really see it great in this picture, but report reactor number 1 exploded after a full meltdown. So reactor 1 exploded, and the same thing for number 2, number 3, and number 4. So officially number 4, it never happened. Official story is reactor 4 didn't melt down. So here's another feeble attempt to spray water. And this is only meant to lull the audience worldwide, right, and give the media something new. But these are firemen. They don't know nothing about radiation. If they did, they wouldn't even go there. You couldn't drag them there. You couldn't throw enough money at them. They would quit their job if they understood. And so that's why they're used. So the local fire departments are trained to fight fires at nuclear power plants, wherever they're to. But they're not trained to comprehend anything you're seeing tonight. They're not given any kind of indication that there's health harms. If you stay over here, you're going to be okay. That's what they're told. It's a complete fabrication. And it's on purpose, because an informed person can make the worst decisions, right? Make everything many times worse. Every time you put an uninformed person in charge in the nuclear industry, right, or a disingenuous person in charge in the nuclear industry, you're going to make problems for humanity for millions of years, enormous problems worldwide. Because the emissions are, if I get radiation isotopes in my body, I do. When I die, say I was incinerated, most likely that would be released back into the environment. And if it took 1 million years to find another species and eventually kill them, it will. This is a weapon. The anthropogenic man-made isotopes are weapons against everything with replicating cells. There's nothing with replicating cells that has an autoimmune trigger that can defend against the anthropogenic man-made radioactive fallout. And not taking that serious, not taking a serious threat is the downfall now of, it's an extinction event. The entire nuclear core injected into the environment. We've never seen nothing like that. We've never heard nothing like that in our history. Yet Chernobyl's worse. And so if you go to all the media, you type in world's worst nuclear disaster, you're going to get all the biggest medias on the planet, links in the news. And they're all going to tell you Chernobyl is. Chernobyl was a new reactor. It was a small reactor. It was a graphite reactor. It didn't have decades of reactor cores stored at the top of the buildings. Fukushima are massive reactors. They're pure uranium, pure plutonium. They had over 3 decades of reactor cores stored in 2 fuel pools at the top of the buildings. They produce around 5.5 reactor cores each year. And the majority of that is kept at the top of the building because they don't have a repository anywhere. And these are things you should take serious. So when I seen this picture, I was like, so what do you say, right? Stay left of the line. You got a nuclear meltdown. This is the definition of hell. You got cars, might even have dead bodies in them at this point. You don't know. Like wreckage everywhere. Absolute carnage everywhere. And a remote control bulldozer plow through and throw everything in the back. And then somebody drew a chalk line in her paper suit and went a couple of 100 feet down the road and dropped dead, most likely. When you see the Green Regent, you don't hang around. You turn around and get the frig out of Dodge. You don't look back. That's Medusa land right there. Your organs are melting. So every time I see these pictures are particularly difficult for me. You see the people up there in the very corner? Like they got a chalk line here. So that's where they're allowed to travel apparently or something. Stay on. Keep the building close to you. Don't cross the chalk line. You'll be okay. If you go over there and get that thing over there, I'll give you $2,000 this afternoon. Lots of people were told that, eh? Because they weren't going to live to see the afternoon, right? Squeals of delight from the Environmentalists. This is the arrogance of the United Kingdom. Japan will awake on May the 2nd, powered entirely by non-nuclear energy. Oh, what a crying shame. As many as half of us are against the idea of restart, the DPJ lawmakers said. Public opposition running hot. Now solid majority against nuclear disease factories. So if you told that person there's a squeal of delight, he should, whoever wrote that story should have to go to his funeral and carry his coffin and everybody else that died at Fukushima. Not that they got funerals. Many in Fukushima exposed to radiation well above the permitted levels. Well, that's true worldwide now, isn't it? Australia. Government kept child radiation surveys secret. The thyroid glands of the Waki kids exposed to doses of 35,000 microsieverts, 35 millisieverts. That's 35,000 microsieverts. Half a microsiever is considered an evacuation zone before Fukushima. 35,000 in your child's thyroids. As if all the radiation is just going to aggregate in the thyroid. Is anybody that naive or gullible? It takes 5 minutes for your blood to distribute it through your entire body, by the way. And when you're in a absurd nuclear wasteland, so 35,000 microsieverts means when you get that kind of dose, you're in a nuclear wasteland. So they're going to produce nothing but anthropogenic man-made hormones and stem cells. So, like, there's all kinds of illnesses and diseases and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. But, you know, I don't know sometimes. I know the nuclear industry is insane, is all I can tell you. They're actually insane. Let me see if I can find that clip everybody hates because I played it so much. Yeah, these shows are doing me wonders, though. They do me wonders. It's a tough gig, right now for me. But you know, there's 4 or 5 weeks I can do nothing. Just make it through each day. Hope the next week it'll be better. Let me see if I can find the video. I made a video like 12 years ago. I think it was 2013 or something. It's affectionately known as the moron video today. I was a moron to think that I could... You know, I always felt that, you know, as the poll says tonight, the entire nuclear industry couldn't exist if the world knew what they'd done. The media's the universities, man. The world will turn on them. At some point, see, this is going to come out. Wait, never find that video. I'll find every other video, I bet you, but I won't find that one anymore. It's not a bad thing. Everybody's probably sick of my video. I gotta give up that easy though. One more kick at the can here. Oh well. Normally that video I'm looking for is everywhere. Normally everybody groans when I drags it out. Not really, that's not true of course, but okay, let's keep going I suppose. I'm not very good at quitting either. That's another problem I got. I got no idea where to put it. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a thing. It's just, I showed you pictures of the Forrest Gump. Oh, there it is. I got to poke that in all my usual places now. While we're watching it. Pictures will get better when it starts playing. I hope. This is just 4 of some of the medias in 2013 claiming they're on top of reactor 4.
I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in reactor 4.
How the hell did he do it?
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
Less than a chest x-ray. Got less than a soul. Okay, I just copied and pasted that into the last 2 folders I checked trying to find it. A city of 290,000 people, 60 kilometers from Fukushima meltdown is in danger. Extremely high radiation detected. That same city, 7 people dropped dead on one street in the first year. A shopping street. Have you got a street like that in your town where 7 people dropped dead in 1 year? Fukushima's got a few of them. Japanese government withheld a radiation forecast to prevent causing panic. That was nice of them. 300,000 atoms. So Becquerel, BQ, is a pulse of energy in every direction, is an explosion. And the isotope might do that for tens of thousands of years, say. Like plutonium or americium or curium or radioactive iodine. So they're only talking about iodine, unincluded iodine 131, so there's 10 times more 132, 30 times more 133, 31 times more iodine 129 in that same sample, for instance. You can't just have, these are all gammas, you can't just have gammas. You're going to have the alphas, the neutrons, betas, and you're going to have similar quantities of them too, right? And this is Tokyo, 240 kilometers away, so imagine how bad it is at ground zero. So the excrement, the sewage, now the slag is sewage that's dehydrated. Typically, high levels of radioactive sewage found in Tokyo, 240 miles away, kilometers away, 170 atoms per kilogram. So in order to have a Becquerel, you need an atom, an isotope pulse in energy. And for layman's term, we're just going to call it a man-made atom. And they'll even describe it that way many times too, right? These are absurd numbers. Now this is stuff, and the national government issued guidance on May the 12th to dispose of the radioactive sludge and slag in Fukushima prefectures, to burn the sludge and store the burned sludge, the slag. The burned sludge was considered slag. in containers. However, there's no such standard for radioactive sewage treatment outside. So they dehydrate it first, so they can burn it, the sludge. So the radioactive emissions are missing. So these numbers are missing 3/4. There's three times more missing than what they're using. The samples taken at 2 additional facilities showed radiation of 100,000. Now they're only looking for cesium or iodine. Who knows in this case? I can't remember. And it had the slag, the stuff left over then, is recycled into cement. So these are maniacs. This is the worst things you can do. They took whatever. What is the worst thing we can do in this scenario? What is the worst thing we can do in that scenario? What's the worst thing we can do in these scenarios? And that's the ones they chose every time. Every time. So was that an accident? Was that just a coincidence that they picked the worst solution and they never even had a good solution in the equation? There's no such standard for radioactive sewage treatment outside the prefecture. Of course, you see what Tokyo was like, right? I just showed you. I'll give you some more. You only need this once in your community or your city or your village or your town or your country or your continent, and it never goes away. It's a permanent hazard to everything with replicating cells. All 9 million species, all the biota and the bacteria and the fungus is all decimated first. Rain caused 29 million atoms per square meter in the soil. Rain, just a single rainfall. Linked to Fukushima, where the freak else would have come from? Because you'd have an absurd plume. If you got that in one sample, it's probably nutty across the street compared to that sample. See, and wherever the gutters are coming down onto the earth, that's going to be nasty spots. Sharp rise in iodine-131 levels at 3 Tokyo sewage plants. So if you're excreting absurd radioactive materials, how much is sequestered in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, right? Professor, it's true 70% of Japan's territory is polluted. It irradiates the nuclear wasteland. It's different than pollution. Pollution, you can do some things to mitigate it. Nuclear fallout, you can't, because it's reliberated back into you're breathing it. And it has an instant cause and effect to your immune system, to your white blood cells. It's true about 70% of Japan's territory. It's 100% of it, period. There's no water in the entire country on top of that is not incredibly radioactive. Tokyo contaminated with highly toxic radiation, highly toxic. It's blanketed. It's an invisible blanket of death. Experts worry about the catastrophic impacts on health because heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. Ask your hairdresser, already seen an increase of that in their customers. And get ready for the, oh boy, we were just talking about that routine. Tokyo government finds iodine-131 levels up to quadruple cesium levels water reclamation centers. Reclamation, water filtration. So the sediment from the water filtration is so radioactive they can't get rid of it. Now, when you're acknowledging iodine-131, never forget the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod is the curium isotopes. Curium isotopes last forever in your worlds. It'll be here 1 million generations after you're gone. This is the stump of it. This is original pictures of reactor 3, I believe. And, I know it's reactor 3. And reactor 4. I can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference? Now, that never happened. This never happened. Since 2023, that puppy never happened. No, we got everything out of the fuel pools, 150 feet at the top of the buildings of the stumps. Nothing got out. Everything's good. Go back to sleep. I'm going to go with the theory that it got out. No, it's all in the tanks. Have a nice day. Dana's a piece of shit. Home Tokyo, cesium levels spiking with unusually high amounts of fallout. What do you mean unusually high? Anything is unusual when it comes to radioactive fallout. Home to the world's largest drinking water reservoir, built to supply 36 million people, metropolitan Tokyo. Let's go Tokyo. Radiological impact of nuclear power plant accidents on freshwater fish. They got a study for everything, right? They studied to downplay every facet of Fukushima. I find it fascinating. Radiation levels on the United States West Coast spiked to 1 million times normal. IRSA and French government. It was actually 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. This model was based on 23 days from. This was a spike. It spiked. This wasn't a projection. This wasn't a guesstimate. This was a spike. This was documented. So they took the documentation of what they got on their early warning systems and then put it into a model. This is the French government. French government, not Dana. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just dealing with facts. And people can't deal with that. Well, the only reason they're going to call me a conspiracy theorist is because they can't argue with my facts. And for some people, that's enough, but that's desperation for them. They get paid anyway, right? As long as they harass me, they don't have to be factual. They're not going to call in and debate me or something. Say, Mr. Dana, and show me the evidence. I always get a kick out of how cowardly they are, right? They always hide away. I find it fascinating anyway, right? That. And they're the ones that walk, they're going to a shop, they'll probably buy everybody into a coffee. You'll see them, they'll stand out in the crowd, right? They're wearing suspenders in the summertime and hold their shorts up. Always snickering. You got a sarcastic comment for everything. 1 million times normal. So you had a visible plume at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air covering the entire planet, sustained for 300 years, and it pulses energy 600 feet. So think of a snowstorm covering the planet. It never stops snowing. On top of that, snow never melts. So after 30 days, that's a problem, right? You're tired of digging snow and you can't see out your windows anymore. And it's not looking good for next month. Summer's never coming. That would get your attention. You got your attention now, right away. I got to shovel the snow again tomorrow. Honey, you got to shovel it every day. It's never going to stop snowing. For Christmas, we'll get you a snowblower. If you're really good, you take out the garbage all the time. So it's hard to process that, but that's what it is. That's not up for debate. That's not maybe, not perhaps. That's forever and ever and ever. Embrace the pain? No. What about our children's? What about their children's? What about the species? What about the birds and animals and mammals and insects? When do they get a voice? When do they get a turn? When do they get a man in the equation? When do they get a seat in Parliament or Congress? They deserve it. They deserve a voice. You deserve a voice. We're all in the same boat. We should work together. There we go. James got a new song out. Beautiful timing. I'm not sure tomorrow. I was thinking about a few things for tomorrow, a couple of shows tomorrow. I'm still not full of piss and vinegar, but tomorrow is a big anniversary, right? All the pinheads, the nuclear industry got their satanic anniversaries tomorrow. I'm glad that the swelling's gone down in my foot, because I'm still busted up from the fall, right? So, but at least I'm able to do things now. I can't get very far. And we just had warm weather for a couple of days, a bunch of rain, and now, because we had absurd amount of snow, it was absurd. And now you got mostly bare ground out there. We got more snow coming. Not a lot, though. I think spring is finally here. I hope it's in your area, too. James got a new song here for us. As an extra gift for us. So we started off with, one of his, he's got so many great songs, The last song he put out, because he got a new one out an hour ago, but the last song he put out, we played at the beginning of the night. I had that on loop for like an hour there tonight. And that's the kind of stuff that can change the world too, folks. Get over there and give him a thumbs up. I put a link in the description. If you're watching it later after the live show, you got to wait 12 hours, and then my comments section will show back up and you'll get access to that link. You can find the descriptions, or you can just go type it in. What have we got done now? Oh. You can just type it in. James Lucet. You'll also see him if you're currently in the comment section. You'll see his comments there. There's links in my description directly to the site. We started the show off with Nuclear Energy Launchpad. And we're going to be privileged with the first song. First couple of views of Nuclear Mother. And this kind of stuff scares me sometimes. You remember that group at their Mother for Nuclear? I don't know if he's going after them or... We're going to enjoy it, whatever it is. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. Happy anniversary, pinheads. Nuclear industry. I know you're out there. And you can still get a vote in. The entire nuclear industry, it could not exist if people knew the media and universities had faked Reactor 4. You're not familiar with that.
My understanding is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building
That's the media pretending they're on top of Reactor 4. And that's just 4 of them. There's many more that done that. That's what I mean by that poll. Anyway. Have a great night. We'll see everybody on the next one.
Thanks, love. When people come by, you can hand them one of these flyers, yeah?
Okay, Mum.
And if they drop a coin in, just say thank you. Simple as that.
I can do that.
You think people will come?
They will.
Folks get curious when they see the shirts. It starts conversations.
About the power?
About keeping the air clean and making sure your future's bright.
Unicorn atom, mother with the atom, little mouth say nuclear too young. Atom on the shirt and the child turning little girl language into nuclear cartoons. Clean, reliable, safe, that's the bullshit they'll use. Liability walks away when the atom serves as a family heirloom. Reliable for decades, affordable to who? Little girl taught to wear a paper suit. Marilyn guy in the country still, at home in the playroom, made to seem benign. Bedtime at home, little girl all tucked in. Mother makes it normal, lets the greenwashing sink in. Nuclear mother, unicorn atom fantasy. Nuclear mother, atom at bedtime. Nuclear mother, clean talk, dirty supply chain. Children say nuclear to you. No warning in the picture, no danger on the shirt. Just the atom and the daughter. Nuclear mother, unicorn atom fantasy. Atom at bedtime. Nuclear mother, clean talk, dirty supply chain. Nuclear mother. Children say nuclear to you. Nuclear mother.
That's awesome, man. Nuclear Mother is he's doing a video because the mothers are the very last people that should be pro-nuclear, right? Awesome. Take care. Hugs for everybody.